Kakadosh Boker Or Daf Yomi Masechet Batra Daf Samechet Amud Aleph. We're just going to start on Samechet Amud 68b, the Mishnah on the bottom of the page. It's actually a long Mishnah, but that's where we're going to start just to get into the concept. If you're going to sell a field, so you sold the stones which are for the necessity of the field, the takanim shebakerem, or the reeds which are going to be inside of the field, shem letzorko, which are for the kerem, for the vineyard, for whatever that you need, or you also bought the grains which are connected to the ground, and also the kanim which are much bigger, right? Which are going to be grown together. Which is going to be less than a betrova, and the shomer, the sukat shomer, which is basically the watchman's hat. Exactly. Which is not made out of clay. Or a charuv, which is basically a carob tree, which was not, that means it was still not grafted together, right? Because it was still young. Or a tree which was very, very young, which they still did not cut the branches. But you do not sell the stones which were not for necessity, or the kanim, the reeds, which are not for the necessity of the field, or any types of grains which were already detached from the ground. If he told them, though, however, the field and everything which is inside of it, everything's going to be sold, whether one or another. He's never going to sell the chitzat kanim, which is, again, these are the kanim, the big reeds, betrova, which is going to be a betrova, but it's already an important piece by itself, or not the watchman's hat, which is made out of teeth, because it's chashuva in itself. Meaning the fact that I sold you that, but it's I had to include it in the contract. Meaning the fact that I didn't include it, so therefore it's an important piece of land in itself, because it's made out of clay. It's like a real house. And not the carob tree which is going to be grafted, not sidana mishka and shikma, or not the sadana shikma. It says over here again, there's going to be part of the tree which was already pruned, or I don't know how you want to exactly say it in English, which basically they started cutting it, but it's going to be important on its own. Says the Gemara, Samechet Amud Aleph on the top, 69a. Says the Gemara, what are the stones which are used for the field? Here they translated it as avnei de akpa. We're talking about avanim, right? Which they put all these things on it in order to come and to dry it. And Ula comes and he says avanim sedurot legader. We're talking about stones which are used as a fence. We learned Ruchia taught avanim sedurot legader. We're talking about stones which are going to be for a gader. Tani sedurot. So he says you're right. According to that, we have to learn, right, the sedurot. Sedurot means that it's like mesudar. It's like organized. In an organized fashion, that the stones are going to be organized. Those are sold? Yes, because those are the ones which are going to be used. Exactly. Okay? So says the Gemara, here in Bavel, they said, we're talking about the ones which are used in order that it shouldn't fly away. So it's used to dry the things, according to Rabbi Meir. The mitaknan, that they're going to be mitukanot, that they're going to be fixed. Even though they're not placed during the time, even though they're not placed there during the time of the sale, still it's going to be included, because that's used for like the drying process. But a banan, according to rabbis, it's only if it's going to be there at the time that it's included. Ula, according to Ula, that he comes and he says that we're talking about avanim seduro lagader. According to Rabbi Meir, it's only going to be the mitakna when they're already fit there for the field, meaning they're there as using as like a fence. Even though you didn't actually put them one on top of another to make them. But according to Rabbanan, it's only if you actually fixed it as a fence, meaning now it's a fence, then yes. But according to Rabbanan, no. Next, we were talking about in the two dots, we're talking about the reeds, which are used for the field. Kanim, what are you talking about reeds now? What are you doing with reeds in the field? So Amrid Rabbi Yanai, they said in the academy of Rabbi Yanai, Kanim mechulakim shemamidim tacha gefanim. We're talking about like these kanim, which are going to be placed under the grapes in order, many times, you go around the houses and you see that there's like these poles that they are used in order like to hold up the trees. Like they put like wires and all these things and they put them around the trees so that way they don't fall and that they stay straight and all those things. So that's the concept. Okay? According to Rabbi Meir, the Meshapian, we're talking about that they're going to be fixed there in order to hold up the grapes. Even though they're not actually there yet, right? But according to Rabbanan, it's only if it's already stuck in the ground and it's already holding up the grapes, that's when it's going to be included. Okay? Next. The same halacha would apply to the tevuah, to the grain which is going to be mechubar lekarka. Says the Gemara, and even though that it's already ripened, right, the fact that it's not reaped, it's still included.
A lot of times. ready to be cut, it's considered.
Exactly, but here no. As long as it wasn't reaped, it's going to be included. Or the chitzat kaddish pekutam betorova. If it's going to be less than betorova, even though they're going to be very, very strong, it doesn't matter. Meaning, as long as it's less than a certain cubical meters, it's still included in the field. Veta shomera, or we're talking about the watch hut, right? Even though it's not going to be connected to the ground, it's still included, right? Also the charuv, the carob tree, which is not going to be grafted, or the betulat hashikma, even though they're very, very strong. But you didn't sell the stones, which are not for its necessity. According to Rabbi Meir, we're talking about that it wasn't fixed for it. According to Rabbanan, that they weren't readily prepared. They weren't like organized in an organized fashion.
You're talking about the hut, or
no? Now we're talking about the
tree?
Stones. Now we just finished the carob tree in the hut.
Back to stones again.
Yes, we're back to stones because we said that you sold the stones which are for the necessity, but not the stones for not necessity. What were the stones which are not the necessity? According to Rabbi Meir, it's that you are not going to use it. According to Rabbanan, it's not that it's not mesudar, it's not organized fashion. It means even though you could have used it, but it's not an organized fashion. According to Ula, that he says we're talking about for the field, right? That means that's not the field, the fence, right? The stones which you're using for a fence. According to Rabbi Meir, it's not fixed for a fence. And according to Rabbanan, it is fixed for a fence, but it's not organized, right? Like ready as a fence. Okay, or we said that not the reeds which are not for the thing. Okay. We're not talking about the reeds which are going to be in the vineyard, which are not for its necessity. According to Rabbi Meir, we're talking about that they're not fixed for it. So you can't use them to stand up for the grape yard, for the vineyard, meaning like to use them like as a poles to keep up the vineyards, like, nicely, because they're not fit for it. And according to Rabbanan, they weren't placed. Meaning even if they are fit, remember, according to the rabbis, as long as it's not organized, already, like ready to use, not included. You could use it? No. And not the tivua, which is going to be separated. He says, even though it still needs the field, meaning even though right now you have the grain which was reaped, meaning they already cut it, and even though it still needs the ground, doesn't matter. The second that you cut it, that's it. Or the chitza kanim, which is going to be a betrova, even though they're very, very small, as long as it's got a betrova of measurement, it's enough. Meaning you're going to tell me, yeah, but Rabbi, it's a small little tiny thing. Yeah, but no. But even if the grains are small, the fact that it's a big piece of land with these grains, it's a separate entity in its own. Okay? Even we're talking about ערוגה קטנה, right? It's got its own name, meaning, if I'm going to come and I'm going to sell you my field, but I had like a strawberry, I don't know what it's called, like a furrow, right? Even if it's going to be one furrow, but the fact that it's got its own name, I didn't sell it to you. Because it's a separate entity in itself. Okay? Rav Papa says, but it has to be called also that ugat varadim of a certain person, meaning then it's going to be considered a field on its own because everyone knows it's a strawberry thing of Richard Moore. Yeah. Okay? Fine. Now you didn't sell the watch hut, which was made out of clay. Why? Because if it was made out of like cement and clay, so then what happens is it's a separate entity in itself because it's very important. It says, even though it's connected to the ground, right? Okay, we skip these when it's the brackets. So by Rabbi Lazar comes and he asks, when we have these karot, which they come and they go around the house, right? That means basically, I don't know how you say it in English. It's basically, it part of, it's like doorstop. They usually use it in order to, when you open up the door, that it doesn't bang the wall, no?
Well, yeah, that sounds like it. Moldings of the top.
Yeah, it's the moldings. It's the moldings of
it's closed.
Yeah, it's the moldings. So he says, what's halacha? Is that included in the house or not? So Hechal the mechaber betina, if it's going to be mamash connected to the house, that it's like, connected with clay. So obviously there's no question. It's connected. When's the question? Only if it's going to be connected with like a wood and things like that, which basically pegs and everything, you could take it out basically very easily to, right? So what's halacha? Take it. We don't have an answer. By Rabbi Zera, so Rabbi Zera comes and he says, what about now the frames of the windows? That's only made just for like beauty, right? And therefore, it's not part of the house. Well, since it's connected. I would say nowadays that these are like the curtains of the houses. The curtains many times are for privacy, but many times it's just more like for beauty. And it's not really connected. So what's halacha? Take. We don't have an answer.
It says here window molding.
Yeah, again, it's moldings. I just said that nowadays, this is probably what we're talking about now. That it's something like curtains, because many people, you would say in the olden days that you need it for privacy. Nowadays, the
what
majority of
they
people don't
shutter,
use
like
it. For
indoor shutters. They
Yes,
had,
exactly.
something.
Yeah. So by Rabbi Yomi comes and he asks, "Malbenot shel karei hamita, what about pieces of wood by the bed?" Right? Again, now this they basically have them that they put on the bottom of the bed. They put like a type of thing which is also for beauty, but really they're doing it in order that it doesn't destroy the bed on the floor. You understand? Meaning it's like sockets that they put the bedpost inside
Remember,
in
a lot of the
order.
rooms didn't have hard floors. So
Exactly.
They didn't want the pegs to go
Exactly, to go inside. So they would make something in order to hold it in. What is halacha? Is that sold with the bed or not? Meaning, I just sold you the bed. Does it include these sockets or not? So if it's going to be moved with it, so obviously, so there's nothing to talk about. So the way it's moved with it. But when's the question if it's not moved with it? Meaning that when I pick up the bed, these sockets still stay in the ground and it's not really connected. So in such a case, what's halacha? Teiku. Again, we don't have an answer. Not the carob, which is the carob tree, which is going to be grafted, or the tree which was not pruned yet, or it was pruned yet. Sorry, that they cut the branches in order. The afagav the katini, even though they're very very thin, it's not going to be included. Samachet bet 69b. When do we have these words? Amar Rav Yudah Rav says of you the name of Rav. The Amar it says in the pasuk Vayakom Sedeh Ephron Shebe Machpelah. Right, so the field of Ephron, which was in the Machpelah. Remember, this was a field that was sold to Abraham, right, to Avraham Avinu. So it says Mish Tzarich Gvul, right? Anybody that needs a gvul, which means this wood, where there was the name of the person who was planted and everything, was needed to know the gvul of exactly where the field was. And that's why it says, Vayakom Sedeh Ephron, Saviv. What does that mean? You should have just said, why did it say Asher Bechol Givulo Saviv? Well, that was inside the border. So he comes and he says, Yatsu Elu Shen Tzachim Ligvul. He says, when you're going to have these things which are not needed to find out where the border is, so therefore, since it's Gadol and Chashuv, so therefore we know who it is, so therefore these pieces of wood are not sold with a field. Meaning, if I need the wood, if I need the tree in order to identify boundaries, so then it's included in the field. But if Be'emet, I don't need it to identify the boundaries, and I know the boundaries, since the tree is important in itself, so therefore it's not included in the sale of the field. That's what we're saying. Okay? So says the Gemara, Saviv. What does it mean? Asher bechol gevulo Saviv, which is around it. Meshashia comes and he says, from here we learn that when you sell something, you sell, right, with the boundaries as well, mina Torah. And therefore all the trees which are inside of it, or inside of the mitzarim, are also included, which means that if you sold Stam a field, right, he bought all the boundaries
there
with
were
it.
these narrow sections of land that surrounded the fields.
Right, so that's included. So Amar Rav Yudah comes and he says, if you're going to come and you're going to sell a field to your friend, you have to come and you have to write to him, that part of the seal was also the palm trees and the young the palm shoots and all these types of also trees, right? Even if you didn't write it, right, still it's going to be acquired. Still shoot for the shtarahu. It's the beauty of the shtar, meaning we don't want problems. So when you're going to write something, make sure that everything is going to be. So says the Gemara, Amar Lei, so he comes and he says, Ara v'dikle chazinan, i'itle dikle, yaivle tre dikle. If you have the field and also the dikalim. So if he right now has dikalim in another place, so give him 2 dikalim. If he doesn't have, zavile tre dikle, sell him 2 dikalim, right? In order to be mekayim his words, that there's not going to be chusrei emunah.
He's got palm somewhere else.
Yeah, because basically what's happening is that the mocher comes and he tells the lokeach, I'm selling you right now the karka and the kalim. Now it's mashma that there's 2 separate sales. I'm selling you land and I'm selling you the kalim. So he comes and he says, let's see. If right now the mocher has the kalim somewhere else, so therefore he has to sell to him 2 dekalim and he sells to him the field. But if he doesn't have 2 dekalim somewhere else, so then he has to actually sell to him 2 dekalim inside the field in order that it's not called that he's lacking his emunah. Now, but if it was one more time, 1 second, right? 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Now, if it's going to be subjugated, parikle tre dikle. So then what happens is he has to actually redeem 2 different types of, he has to redeem 2 different palm trees, right? Which he has to pay it back, and then he's going to keep it. Okay? So basically, now what happens is now this is now a second thing. What happens if a person comes and he says, Ara bidikle? He didn't say, I'm selling you a field and I'm selling you palm trees. He came and he said, I'm selling you karka bidikalim, with meaning with. It's not just, I'm selling you field and I'm selling you palm trees. Here, he's changing the terminology. It's like with both. So chazina, and we're going to see if the bidikle, if he does have palm trees in the field, he has to give it to him. And if not, it's a mistake. Because since here he said, I'm selling you a field with palm trees, it has to be the same field. It cannot be that he's got palm trees somewhere else. But in the first case before, where I explained to you, Richard, what happened was it was actually like two separate entities. It was selling you a field and I'm selling you palm trees. Here it's a mekato because if there's no palm trees in the field, it's lacking. So says the Gemara, Ara Beidikle. Now what happens? The first one was Ara Vidikle, field and palm trees. Second one was Ara Bidikle with palm trees. Now it's a place for the palm trees. Lele Dikle, if he doesn't have the Chazil Dikle Kamale. It's fitting for palm trees, not that it has to be fitting for it. The Elmaleh, and he says, Lebar midikla planya, except for when they come and he says, listen, I'm going to sell you this field, except for this palm tree, whatever the name was. Chazina, we're going to see idikla tavahu. If it's a good one, he left it over for himself. Why? He wanted this type of palm tree, whatever one. Meaning, I'm going to come and I'm going to say, except for my avocado tree, it was a good one. So except for that one, he says idikla bisha, but if it's a bad one, kol sheken hanach. Then all the more so that all the good ones also he didn't actually give it to him. Amarle, if he tells him lebar milane, except for trees, eat leilan if it has trees, lebar milane. So it means except for those trees, because they belong to him. He eats ledikle if he's got, right. Let's say he comes and he says he's got the palm trees, lebar midikle, except for the palm trees. He eat legufne if he's got grapes like vineyards, lebar megufne. We're talking about except for the gifanim, meaning at the end of the day, even though I only told you except for trees, the vineyard, meaning the grapes are included, and the palm trees are included, and the trees are included. All three, now it all depends. If I only told you trees and there's trees, that's it. But let's say there's no trees and there's only palm trees. So the palm trees are the trees. And let's say there's no palm trees, there's only grapes. So the grapes are the trees. But the fact that I told you except for the trees, it had to be one of these three.
But if field has trees and vines.
What happens if there's trees and vines? So he says it's only the trees. Why? Because I only told you the trees. If there's trees and palm trees, it's only the trees. What about now if you only have vines and palms? Because I told you except for trees. There's no trees. There's only vines and palms. So in such a case, it's only the vines. Okay? Amar Rav, and Rav comes and says
it's sold without the vine.
Except for. That means the vines are the only things which are excluded. Because I told you except for the trees. There's no trees. There's only palm trees and vines. So it's coming to exclude the vines. Okay? So Amar Rav comes and he says, anything which you're going to come and you're going to measure, right? He says here that it's so tall, you have to actually go up in order to like pick it up. You have to like take it down. Have a shiur. That's considered a shiur, right? But if it's short enough that you don't need to go up to it, right? Lo shiur, it's not considered a leftover, whatever you left over. But basically, it has to do with, do you have to actually go up and climb up and get it or not? And then obviously we'll continue with Hashem.
You don't do